Welcome back to the Below Average Joe's MMA show. Today's video will be a combination of UFC Vegas 96 and of the third and final PFL playoff event that went down in Washington, D.C. on Friday night. Every now and again, we'll get these combination videos if it's a fight night card that gets paired with a PFL or a Bellator card. Considering there weren't a ton of humongous finishes from the PFL card in specific, I'd rather just touch on what the playoff matchups are going to be. So since that's going to be on the shorter side of things, I figure let's just combine it here with UFC Vegas 96. I am going to start with the UFC card though. The main event, Caio Borralho remains perfect in the UFC and gets the biggest win of his career to date against Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier. Now, what's next for the middleweight title contender, Caio Borralho? 31 years old, 17-1, 7-0 in the UFC, and now a UFC main event under his belt. Caio Borralho is here to stay in the middleweight elite, and now he will enter come Tuesday morning the top 5 of the 185-pound division. At least I think he'll enter the top 5. And how will he get that top 5 spot? Well, he earned that by beating former title challenger, 3 weight class veteran in the UFC, Jared Cannonier, in an absolute war that saw these two go toe to toe for 25 straight minutes. Yes, you heard that right. Toe to toe, on the feet, in the striking is what we got to see in this matchup here. And you probably weren't expecting that in the lead up to this fight, because neither was I. Caio Borralho started out his mixed martial arts tenure as a young boy doing judo, transitioned into learning the art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and has mastered it alongside his Fighting Nerds training camp. But what did we see here? Not too much of those skill sets used, because he battled with Jared Cannonier, one of the hardest hitting opponents that he's probably ever faced, and one of the hardest hitters in the entire middleweight division. Again, Jared Cannonier is one of only a few select fighters that have knockouts in 3 different UFC weight classes. And Caio marched forward the entire time, kept the pressure on Jared Cannonier, looked very crisp and sharp with his striking, mixing in high kicks, mixing in beautiful low kicks, body work. And let us not forget the nasty shot that he landed against Cannonier in that 5th and final round that made Cannonier's head do a complete 180 degrees, 360 degrees, looked like his head was spinning around in a scary movie. The blood spit out of his mouth. It was a brutal shot that Caio landed that had Jared stunned, dazed, confused, even dropped him down to the canvas. But somehow, some way, Jared Cannonier finds a way to survive. Caio finishes the fight out on the feet. The final scorecards were 4 rounds to 1 for Caio on 2, and 3 rounds to 2 on another scorecard. So Caio pretty much controlled most of this fight while still having a very back and forth affair with Cannonier, a fight that is one of the better bouts of all of 2024 for the UFC so far. And on paper going in, I wouldn't have expected this fight to be that way. I kind of felt that Caio would be able to utilize that great judo and jiu-jitsu background that he has to get Cannonier down to the ground at certain points throughout this fight, rather than choose to stand and trade and have the better sequences on the feet than Jared did. And I love when we can see these prospects that have been rising so quickly. I mean, before this, Caio was 6-0 and really hadn't struggled whatsoever. He was coming off of a quick victory over Paul Craig that he finished him via knockout in May in the 2nd round. Prior to that, he had beaten Abus Magomedov, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, Armen Petrosyan. I mean, pretty notable names on his resume, but made it all look relatively easy. Controlled the fights throughout on the ground, got a couple finishes sprinkled in there. He just hadn't really had to weather many storms, and that is what he had to do here against Cannonier. He had to take shots to keep pressing forward. The gash on Caio's face was disgusting in the aftermath of this fight, and you would have never even known that it was there the way that he was acting in the post-fight interview. You can tell that he's ready to take this next step up and to be amongst the elite of this division, to be amongst the title contenders, to be in that discussion for a potential title shot. And so from this amazing performance that we saw Caio have, where he got to answer questions on if he can go a full 25 minutes, if he can stand and trade on the feet, if he doesn't get the fight to the ground, so many questions here were answered if you were curious to see what the true ceiling is for Caio. And now we will talk about how this performance will shape up the remainder of 2024 for the middleweight title picture. And I think it is simple, so bear with me here. So first and foremost, we're coming off of a title fight in this middleweight division at UFC 305, where we saw Dricus du Plessis defend against Israel Adesanya. Dana White made it sound pretty clear that Sean Strickland was going to be the next #1 contender following his victory against Paulo Costa earlier on this year. And if that is indeed the case, then Caio Borralho should face the winner of Brendan Allen and Nassourdine Imavov coming up here shortly in the fall. And then Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev at the end of October should be the next #1 contender after Sean Strickland, because I would imagine they maybe try and get Sean versus Dricus in December. That could be pushing it, I understand that, but maybe they try and do that to line up more with the Whittaker-Chimaev fight. However, if we don't get Sean Strickland as the #1 contender and they do pursue the winner of Whittaker-Chimaev to be next for Dricus du Plessis, I think you put Caio Borralho in with Sean Strickland, and then you would just have the winner of Allen Imavov on the outside looking in terms of this whole discussion, but still in a very prominent spot in the title contender race. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, Caio Borralho versus the winner of Imavov Allen, and then Chimaev and Whittaker winner gets the next #1 contender fight after Sean Strickland, which would then lead the winner of Caio and Allen and or Imavov to be the second #1 contender. You can kind of build out the remainder of the title contention race, because we're not going to have a champion make, his 5th, 6th, 7th title defense and have rematches with people, so on and so forth. If Dricus can beat Sean, then it's next man up, right? Khamzat and Robert. Then if he beats the winner of that or loses, it's next man up. Caio, Imavov, Allen. I know I'm throwing out a lot of names, a lot of scenarios, but I think that is a good problem to have if you're the UFC. And I think that's why they nailed the matchmaking for the remainder of the year for the middleweight division. You had 5 versus 12 here. You have 3 versus 11, if I'm not mistaken, with Whittaker and Chimaev. You have 7 versus 4, Imavov and Allen. It's perfect. All of the pieces are moving. I talked about it on Friday. Now, in the aftermath of this Caio Borralho victory, it makes it a little bit more clear on who his next opponent could be. It is a mix and match. Pick your poison if you're the UFC between matchups and how you want to do the remainder of this title contender race. So let me know in the comments below, first and foremost, what did you think of this amazing war that Jared Cannonier and Caio Borralho went to? One of the best fights of 2024, the fight of the night for the card. And what do you think is next for Caio Borralho? Do you agree with me, even though I maybe didn't paint it the perfect way because of all the moving pieces? But is that the way the title picture should play out? If Sean is next against Dricus, then Khamzat and Whittaker, the winner of that would be next after Sean, leaving Caio to face the winner of Allen versus Imavov. There are a couple of other names there that aren't booked, such as Marvin Vettori, Jack Hermanson, the remainder of the top 10. You even have Israel Adesanya out there, a name that I didn't throw out. Could it be Caio Borralho versus Israel Adesanya? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. And now we will get into the rest of this UFC Vegas 96 card. First and foremost, we will go to the co-main event where we saw the number 11th ranked Tabatha Ricci get a very close decision win over the number 9 ranked Angela Hill. This was a very fun back and forth that went the full 15 minutes, a fight that I felt could have gone either way. Betting bias on Angela Hill aside, it really picked up in rounds 2 and 3. They stood and banged it out for the entirety of this fight. Angela Hill came on strong in rounds 2 and 3. The pace of this fight was unlike many that I've seen in recent memory, especially in the strawweight division. It made me exhausted just watching the fight. I was tired going into that fantastic main event between Borralho and Cannonier. It was just nonstop from the first bell to the last bell between Ricci and Hill. But Ricci proved that she doesn't just need to have her opponents on the ground to get a victory. She stood and struck for a majority of this fight with Angela Hill, landed a lot of big shots, enough to get the nod on all three judges' scorecards, 29-28. She has now won 2 straight fights over Tisha Pennington and now Angela Hill. She will enter the top 10 come Tuesday morning, and there are a plethora of fresh matchups in this division for Tabatha, being that this was only her 8th UFC fight. She's now 6-2. We have Amanda Hebos scheduled to take on Mackenzie Dern in December. We've got women out there like Marina Rodriguez, Amanda Lemos that are not booked at the current moment. I think either of those two make perfect sense for Tabatha Ricci next, and if she can pass that test, she will then approach top 5 in a strawweight championship contender status. We saw the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 finale go down on this card as well. We had a middleweight fight and we had a featherweight fight. Both of them were very fun fights. Both of them resulted in big time finishes. For the 185-pound champion, it is Ryan Loder, as he got a second round TKO over Robert Valentin. It was nasty. His ground and pound, he had him in the crucifix. Robert was not able to get out of it. The referee had no choice but to step in and call off the fight. Ryan, a very accredited wrestler, all-American wrestler in his background that is new to the sport of mixed martial arts. I believe debuted in 2020 was his first fight, if I'm not mistaken. So still fresh into the game, but a very solid record. Numerous finishes to his name, and now an Ultimate Fighter champion. And the featherweight Ultimate Fighter winner was Mairon Santos at 24 years young. He is already 14-1 as a professional with 8 knockouts to his name. None bigger than this brutal knockout that he had against Kaan Ofli. It was in the second round, 1 minute and 30 seconds in. He hit him with a straight cross that left him asleep, but in the weirdest of ways. He was like in a catcher's stance almost, a catcher in baseball. He was just hovering there asleep. It was crazy how it happened, and then he ended up getting hit a couple more times and getting put down to the canvas. But my goodness, what a victory for the legend, as his nickname is called, from Brazil, and Mairon Santos. The only loss on his record is to Dan Argueta in LFA back in 2022, who is also a UFC fighter in his own right. So again, at this young of age, I am very excited for Mairon Santos and what he can bring to the 145-pound division. Did you guys watch the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 this year? Let me know in the comments below. Transparent here, being that I'm the content creator making all of these previews and breakdowns and following the sport of MMA. I didn't really get to tune in much to this season of The Ultimate Fighter, but I will say that I was happy that both finale fights were so action-packed and got 2 big winners. If you had forgotten about Michael Morales, or he wasn't on your radar to begin with, I feel like he made a pretty good statement here to get fresh of mind for you in this welterweight division, because he improved to 17-0 with 13 finishes at the age of just 25. The young man fighting out of Ecuador knocked out Neil Magny 4 minutes and 39 seconds into the very first round. This was a huge victory for Michael, who is now 5-0 in the UFC. He's a 2021 Contender Series alum. No wins bigger for him than this one right here against Neil Magny, who, in a respectful way, is the best gatekeeper imaginable for young talent to try and crack into the top 15 of the 170-pound rankings. Michael Morales passed with flying colors. I've been huge on this guy the last few years. He's had a couple of fights in 2023, a couple in 2022, so he's been active with 2 fights in each year. Maybe we get him in there one more time in 2024 to make it another year with 2 fights at the end of the year. Let's look at the back half of the top 15 of welterweight, because we've got Kevin Holland, who's booked against Roman Dolidze in the middleweight division. We have Michael Venom Page, Vicente Luque, Joaquin Buckley is booked to face Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and then we have Jeff Neal rounding out at number 10. Give me him versus Neal. Give me him versus Luque, since he's not booked currently or rebooked against Nick Diaz. Give me him versus Michael Venom Page. Are you kidding me? Any of those 3 matchups are beautiful fights to think about in terms of the X's and O's and styles for Michael Morales. He's earned his spot amongst the creme de la creme in this welterweight division in just his 5th UFC fight. We saw Gerald Meerschaert make history by now holding the record for most finishes in UFC middleweight history, passing Anderson the Spider Silva. He now has 12 finishes in the 185-pound weight class, and he did it via submission, because of course he did, his 29th professional career win by submission, and he does that via comeback with an arm triangle choke in the second round, 4 minutes and 12 seconds in, against Edmen Shahbazyan, who tried to finish GM3 in that second round, wasn't able to put him away, blew his gas tank, and immediately you could see the switch of momentum. GM3, you don't want to be on the ground with that guy, because he will put you to sleep or he will make you tap. A hard loss for Edmen Shahbazyan here, who just continues to have these issues arise where he will get exhausted and can't quite finish the fight out, and that bit him in the behind here. GM3 has won 2 straight fights, both in 2024. The first was against Brian Barberena, and you guessed it, he finished him via submission. At 36 years old, 54 professional fights to his name, he's not slowing down. And lastly, we saw Wang make her UFC debut and put away Victoria Leonardo just 1 minute and 2 seconds in, with one of the nastiest one-punch knockouts you're going to see in women's MMA. This is a flyweight fight, of course. Cong has a kickboxing victory over Valentina Shevchenko in her past. She's 6-0 in her MMA career with 4 finishes. She's 31, 32 years old, so right in her prime, with a plethora of experience, high-level experience at that. She's very fun. She had the Joker makeup on. You probably saw that in the build-up to this fight. She lived up to the hype and then some with this brutal knockout. I really hope we see her get one more in for 2024. And if she wins that one, she will be in the top 15 next, or at least get a top 15 opponent. That is how quickly I believe they're going to launch the Joker in this division. So give me all of your thoughts on UFC Vegas 96 in the comments below. What did you think of that main event, and what could be next for Caio, and what were your biggest takeaways throughout the remainder of the card? And quickly, we will transition from UFC Vegas 96 into the third and final PFL playoff event that featured the welterweights and the featherweights. Let's talk about who made the championship fights for both of those weight classes, and give a final rundown of all 6 matchups that we will see come November. All 4 semifinal matchups between both weight classes went the distance, with the winner winning via decision. Brendan Loughnane got a split decision over UFC veteran Kamaka III. He's now 3-0 on the year. Magomed Umalatov got a decision victory over Neiman Gracie, who was an alternate filling in as the 5 seed in these matchups. That was in the welterweight division. The other featherweight winner was Timur Khizriev. He defeated Gabriel Braga, who made the championship last year. That was a split decision. And Shamil Musayev remained undefeated and beat Murad Ramazanov for the 2nd straight time, this time via decision. So the championship matchup for welterweight will be the number 1 seed undefeated Shamil Musayev versus the number 2 seed undefeated Magomed Umalatov. And the featherweight matchup will be the number 1 seed Brendan Loughnane, looking to win his 2nd PFL championship, taking on another undefeated Russian in Timur Khizriev. What did you think of these fights? Being that all 4 of them went the distance, they weren't, the craziest of barn burner action-packed fights that we've ever seen. What do you make of it? A lot of these semifinal matchups actually ended up going the full 15 minutes. It felt as if, since these fighters are no longer fighting for points to earn their spot into the playoffs, they're now trying to secure their spot to potentially win $1 million. They played it more on that safer side, wanting to ensure the victory. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those matchups. And as a quick revisit, we will talk about the other 4 matchups. In the light heavyweight division, we will have the number 1 seed Impa Kasanganay looking to go back-to-back. To do so, he will have to defeat the 3 seed Dovlet Yagshimuradov. And in the lightweight division, we will have former Bellator champion Brent Primus taking on the 2 seed Gadzi Rabadanov. And the last 2 divisions, heavyweight, will see Denis Goltsov take on the number 2 seed Oleg Popov. In the women's flyweight, this is the one I've been waiting for the most. The 1 seed Dakota Ditcheva will take on the 2 seed Talia Santos. Give me all of your thoughts on the PFL matchups come November in the comments below. Give me your predictions for all 6 championship fights. Being that we're about 3 months away, what are your way too early predictions for those matchups? What are your bets? Are you going to do a 6-leg parlay for all 6 champions? I may dabble into that come November. Give me all your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this combination recap video of UFC Vegas 96 and the PFL Playoff event, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every week I will recap the most meaningful results from every card. I break down and preview the biggest fights, what is at stake, and the storylines heading into every card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA and follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple. Podcast episodes released there every Friday and Monday. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video.